Meanwhile, there is new reporting about President Trump's first phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. According to Reuters, in the conversation, Mr. Trump slammed a treaty that limits nuclear weapons, calling it a bad deal for America. The New START treaty was signed back in 2010 by former President Barack Obama. The reported details about the call come amid a new effort in Congress to impose strict oversight and veto power over the Trump administration if it decides to lift or weaken sanctions against Russia. The charge is being led by Republican Senators John McCain and Lindsey and Democratic Senator Ben Cardin. Earlier, my colleagues Vladimir Duthiers and Reena Ninan spoke with Senator Cardin about that effort. But first, they asked him for his thoughts on Thursday's travel ban ruling.
It's good to see that the checks and balances in our system works. Obviously, there was great concern about the president's executive order from the point of view of whether it would keep us safe or not. Many of us thought it put us at greater risk because it was a recruitment tool by terrorist groups, that it challenged Americans traveling abroad and put them at greater risk, and whether other countries would be working with us. So we're happy to see the executive order put on hold. But we know that President Trump has the propensity to use executive orders. I think this is now a clear indication that he does not have unlimited power, and that the courts are prepared to rein him in when he goes beyond his constitutional power.
Senator, do you believe that this will likely impact Gorsuch's nomination for the Supreme Court?
Well, I think we already were concerned about President Trump and his testing the Constitution, and we wanted to make sure we have an independent judiciary that will rule the way that they should, that they are not going to be intimidated by the president's tweets. So, yes, I think one of the issues that are going to be asked, and was asked, as you saw, by Senator Blumenthal, is views about how this case is being handled by President Trump. So I expect this will be part of the process.
All right, Senator, let me get your take on another effort, that with the Republicans on Russia. It appears to be one of the few things both parties can agree on right now. Lay it out for our viewers and tell us why you feel such oversight is necessary with this administration.
You know, we had an excellent hearing before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Corker and I laid out our concerns, and that we need to work in a nonpartisan way to not only influence the Trump administration as they develop a Russia policy, but to make it clear to our allies around the world that we will not tolerate Russia's conduct in attacking us, as they did in the elections, what they're doing in Ukraine and occupying Crimea and eastern Ukraine, and their complicity in war crimes in Syria, and that we need to speak with a united, strong voice. So you are seeing Republicans and Democrats joining together. I've introduced 2 bills with Republican colleagues concerning Russia and sanctions. You're going to see more of that cooperative conduct in the Senate and in the Congress, because we know that we have to have a unified, strong policy against Russia's aggression.
How much concern is there, Senator, among members of Congress about the warming of relations, potential warming and diplomatic ties with Russia?
I think there's great concern because we don't trust Russia. They don't live up to their agreements. They violated the Minsk agreements. Ask Ukraine how much the agreements you can trust Russia. And when President Trump tried to make a moral equivalency between Putin's murderous conduct and any conduct in this country, I must tell you, Democrats and Republicans said, wait a minute. You're dealing with a country in which you have a leader who will use any type of authoritative practice in order to carry out his agenda. They don't have the same values we have. We need to recognize that. We don't have the same objectives. We need to stand strong against that type of conduct by Russia.
Senator, do you believe that there should be more arming of Ukrainian forces? Should the Senate do more for that?
I've always felt that the United States should have been, and our coalition partners, our Europeans, should have taken a tougher position against what Russia was doing in Ukraine, and that is allowed the Ukrainians the capacity to defend themselves against the incursions from Russia, particularly in eastern Ukraine. So yes, I did support a more aggressive arming of the Ukrainians to defend themselves.
Senator, let's turn now to the cabinet nominees. For the 3rd day in a row, Senate Democrats are trying to, as best as they can, slow the confirmation process down. However, the Republicans, as you well know, have been getting their nominees through. So what's the end game here? I think a lot of Americans are probably wondering, if you don't have the majority, in both houses of Congress, why are you making it so difficult for some of these nominees to get through?
Well, we're using the time that we have available. We're entitled to time for the debate the nominees, and we have used that time to point out. We did that in Ms. DeVos's case as to her commitment to public education. We are very concerned about that. We wanted her to be put on notice that we're going to be watching her, and that, yes, we do not think she's the right person for the Secretary of Education, but we're going to tell the American people why. We're doing the same thing right now with Mr. Price for Secretary of Health and Human Services. We're concerned with the repeal of the Affordable Care Act and all the protection that's in that law, and we're using our time to make sure Americans understand our concerns and why we oppose these nominations. We understand the votes. We know where they'll be. We hope that some Republicans will join us. We would hope these arguments would change some of the votes. But look, it'll be what it is, but we're not going to back away from our responsibilities, our individual responsibilities as senators in the advice and consent of the president's nominees.
Senator, do you worry, though, that opposing his nominees continuously is feeding into President Trump's characterization of Washington as being a swamp?
No, we're not opposing for the sake of just opposing Mr. Trump. Several of his nominees received widespread support among the Democrats. Secretary Mattis, Secretary of Defense, has received broad support. I think he has already stood up to Mr. Trump on torture and other issues that we're very pleased to see. So we are picking, at least I am, those nominees that I feel will not carry out the mission that I think is important and be independent and stand up in the Trump administration and give him independent advice.
President Trump has tweeted with regards to the decision by the Ninth Circuit. I'm going to read it for you and our viewers and get your reaction. President Trump tweeted, "See you in court. The security of our nation is at stake," and it is in all caps. It's a very large tweet. I want to get your reaction on that, sir.
Well, first of all, the president's not going to be able to conduct policy by tweets. You can't conduct foreign policy by tweets, and you can't challenge the Constitution by tweets. So it's not going to work. I understand that he's upset and he gets upset easily, but we pride ourselves in our Constitution. Our Constitution protects everyone, and it is not the president's country, it's our country. And when he goes beyond the bounds of the Constitution, I'm proud that we have a court that will speak out. And I think Americans on all sides of the issues pride ourselves in our independent judiciary. The President of the United States should not be challenging the independence of our judiciary.
All right, sir. Let me ask you about this. On Wednesday, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said that if President Trump continues down the path he is on, Democrats will fight him with every fiber of their being. Do you agree?
Well, again, it depends on the issues. We want our country to succeed, so we're going to do everything we can to work with Republicans, work with the president when we believe we're moving in the right direction. But we have a responsibility when President Trump does things that are wrong, when he comes out with this executive order that I believe makes us less safe on immigration and refugees. In talking to world leaders, they tell me the same thing. I'm going to speak out and use every tool that I have at my disposal to move our country in the right direction. So I think it depends on the issue. No, we want our country to succeed. We want us to move forward, and we're looking for ways we can work together.